The string lights over the boathouse flickered like fireflies trapped in glass, and the band's piano warmed the room with a hymn that wasn't quite formal but felt like Sunday. I stood at the back of the room near the hydrangeas, clutching a linen napkin, watching my son, my grown son, lift his bride's veil and kiss her forehead the way I used to when fevers felt like cliffs we had to climb together. The harbor outside was black silk, the kind that swallows reflections whole. In Boston, even summer nights can shiver. "Beautiful speech," I whispered to my husband as he stepped away from the mic. Russell's jaw tightened. He wasn't steady tonight, not steady at all. Then Mark, my ex-husband, the man who taught Caleb to tie his tie and ride a bike, and listen to vinyl like you were entering a cathedral, made his way to the microphone. He patted his pockets for the paper he didn't need, cleared his throat and looked at our son the way only he could, like the boy who once fell asleep in the laundry basket and the man who now wore a suit with shoulders he hadn't borrowed from anybody. "I'm proud of you," Mark said. "I'm so proud of—" And Russell leaned toward him. It was supposed to be one of those private, sharp whispers couples trade when nobody's watching. He reached past the stems of champagne and laid a controlling hand near the mic stand. His voice, low and almost tender with fury, bled into the sound system and out across the room. "You're not the real father." A faint crackle rolled around the boathouse, like a far-off storm turning in the bay. The bandleader's smile died in place. A fork clinked against a plate and kept clinking. I felt every eye tug toward the stage and then toward me. The hydrangeas smelled too sweet. The napkin split in my hand. Mark blinked. He glanced at the microphone as if it had bitten him. He looked at me, then at Russell, then at Caleb. I saw the exact second my son heard the sentence as words and not static. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, not yet, but with the raw confusion that reminds you you're made of water and bones and questions. Madison's hand tightened around his wedding ring like it might float away. Mark began, then swallowed. The sound tech scrambled. Someone finally muted the channel, but the sentence sat there, a candle you couldn't blow out. Russell didn't move. He seemed surprised by what he had done, and also not surprised at all. I found his sleeve and squeezed until he looked down at me. "Russ," I said, keeping my voice low as if lowering it could lower the volume of what had already happened. "Please." He opened his mouth. Apology, maybe, justification, maybe. But the moment had already torn, and anyone who has ever tried to stitch silk knows the thread leaves scars. Caleb stepped away from the sweetheart table. The groomsmen shifted, then froze. From somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, "What did he say?" And someone else said, "I think we all heard." Caleb's eyes held mine. I felt the weight of 24 years press into my ribs. The weight of one night in Denver. The compass bracelet in my purse. Every silence I had fed until it could stand on its own. "Mom?" he said. The word didn't accuse, it trembled. He wasn't asking if Russell had meant it. He was asking if he had to live with it. I wanted to gather him up like laundry and carry him home. I wanted to roll back the night, the microphone, the sentence, the cheap little revenge that had sounded like truth. I wanted to protect Mark, who had raised a boy into a man without knowing which cells had signed the lease. "I'm sorry," I whispered, but I hadn't told him what for yet. Outside, a horn sounded from a boat pushing through the harbor. In the pause, you could hear the hull cut water. The bandleader removed his hat. The piano landed on a single naked note and let it ring. Caleb turned, not toward Russell and not toward Mark, but toward the exit, toward the cold night and the black water that held all our reflections hostage. The door gave a soft thud behind him. Madison stayed rooted, her face pale in the string-light glow, her bouquet lifting and falling like breath. In the quiet, I heard the voice I had been running from for 2 decades, not Russell's and not Mark's. Another voice, younger, apologetic, holding the weight of a brass trinket between his fingers. "If you get lost, listen for the river. E." I had kept that bracelet all these years tucked in a velvet pouch, like a map I was too afraid to unfold. Russell reached for me, then stopped, his hand hovering in the space where we'd once promised gentleness. He was my husband now, but the words he had put into the room settled on my shoulders like a coat I didn't remember choosing. "Go," he said finally, and his voice broke on the single syllable. Go after him. I nodded. I didn't look at Mark because I didn't know how to hold his eyes and not drown. I didn't look at the guests or the band or the cake we would not cut. I pushed open the door and stepped into the harbour air. The night slipped its cold fingers under my dress. The water smelled like metal and memory. Somewhere to my left, my son's shoes beat a fast pattern on the dock. I ran. I find him standing at the edge of the dock, hands shoved in pockets, the wind making a halo of his hair. He doesn't turn when I say his name. The lights from the boathouse skitter across the water and break. You knew? He asks, still facing the harbour. He doesn't say what it is. He doesn't have to. I knew, I say. The truth leaves my throat raw. I should have told you. When? He faces me now. His jaw is his own, but tonight I see another man there, ghosted like a double exposure. A long time ago, I say. Before any of this. Before everything. My voice is so small the wind almost pockets it. Who? He asks, softer. A boat bell rings somewhere out in the dark, counting our heartbeats for us. His name is Evan, I say. Evan Pike. Caleb doesn't flinch at the name because it's new to him. For me, it's a key that fits an old lock. Behind it is a room that smells like pine cleaner, coffee, and cheap cologne. I met him in Denver, I say. The summer I was 21. I thought he was the kind of safe that looks like danger. He played guitar at a bar off Colfax with duct tape on the case and calluses on every finger. On Sundays, he took me to Sloan's Lake and made me believe the mountains were a promise and not just a backdrop. We were stupid with hope. The dock creaks, agreeing with the past. He gave me this. I reach into my clutch and pull out the small velvet pouch I've carried like contraband. When the brass bracelet falls into my palm, it's heavier than I remember. The compass face is worn to a blur, the arrow smoothed by thumbs that needed direction. On the inside of the cuff, tiny letters say, "If you get lost, listen for the river. E." Caleb stares. You've had that all this time. I was going to give it to you tonight, I say, and something inside me cracks all over again. After the toasts, after the dancing, I was going to tell you the story in a room full of people who loved you, with cake on china, and the band playing something we could mistake for mercy. A seagull cries, irritated that we've invaded its night. What happened? He asks. The words tremble, but beneath them I hear the math of his life recalculating, the lines rearranging on an invisible map. I came back east, I say. I had an internship in Boston and a mother who kept finding reasons to make her kitchen smell like worry. Heaven said he'd follow when the gig money became real money. He sold gear, picked up shifts, sent postcards with pictures of mountains that looked close enough to touch. Then the calls got shorter. The silences got longer. One night I told him I was late. He didn't hang up, but it sounded like he had. And Mark? Caleb says the name carefully, reverently. The man who raised him deserves every careful syllable. I met Mark at the library where I shelved books to pay for groceries, I say. He had ink on his cuff and a shy smile that made you think of kindness before you thought of anything else. He ate hard candy his students gave him and always offered me one. We went for coffee. I told him complicated truths and simple lies. He carried boxes up 3 floors and didn't ask what was in them. You told him? Caleb asks. The wind is softer now, or maybe it's the way his voice turns it. I told him I was pregnant, I say. I told him Evan might come. I told him I didn't know what would happen next. I swallow. He asked what I needed. I said time. He said a crib. We bought one at a yard sale that had a scratch on the side that looked like a map of some country we'd never visit. The dock sways under us. I press the bracelet into Caleb's palm. He doesn't close his fingers around it yet. Maybe he isn't ready to hold what it means. A month after you were born, I say. Evan showed up with a bouquet of grocery store roses and a tremor in his hands he tried to hide. He smelled like old beer and hope. He sang to you in a voice that made the neighbors stop their laundry and listen. He was beautiful and useless in all the ways that matter when milk is the clock you live by. Caleb stares at the dark water. Why didn't you tell me? The question lands like sleet, sharp, inevitable. I told myself I was protecting you, I say. I told myself Mark had earned the title that mattered, and Evan had earned a story. I told myself I'd tell you when you were older, then when you were oldest. I kept moving the line until there wasn't any line left to move. He turns the bracelet over, reads the inscription, and presses his lips together. Does Mark know? He asks. I close my eyes. He knew, and he didn't. We never did a test. We never said the words out loud. We built a house on silence and painted the walls bright colors and hoped the light would hold. Caleb exhales. It's almost a laugh, but not the kind you keep. And Russell? He knew, I say. We don't keep secrets well, he and I. He also doesn't keep anger well. He made it public, Caleb says. He decided the shape of my night. I'm sorry, I say again, and the apology this time is not just for him. It's for the boy inside me who still wishes the river would answer. From inside the boathouse, music starts again. Some brave, simple thing, a waltz with tired feet. On the dock, my son wraps the bracelet around his hand. It doesn't fit. It wasn't made for him, and yet it was. What do you want to do? I ask. He looks at the door and then at the black shine of the bay. I want to know who I am, he says. But first I want to breathe. We stand side by side, both of us counting our breaths like proof of life. The harbor keeps its secrets. For the first time since the sentence ripped through the room, I understand it wasn't just the wrong moment, it was the wrong voice. Back inside, the room has mastered itself into a polite kind of panic. The band plays something neutral, like an apology with no verbs. Guests avoid my eyes with the skill of people who have lived through family holidays. Madison's mother presses a glass of water into my hand. Her eyes are kind and furious in equal measure. I'll find him, Madison says, appearing at my elbow like a small brave bird. We'll be okay. She doesn't ask me for the missing truth, because the night has already answered more than she wanted to know. I nod and look for Mark. He's near the cake, standing as if he has forgotten how to sit. Mark was always good at the practical acts, bandaging skinned knees, reading manuals, flipping pancakes at 6 a.m. But nobody teaches you how to stand after someone has pulled a secret out of your chest in public. I'm sorry, I say. The words feel insufficient, like dropping a towel on a house fire. He watches his hands. There's a smear of frosting on his knuckle. You could have told me, he says, and there's no heat in it, which somehow hurts more. You could have. We could have figured it out. I was afraid you'd leave, I admit. It's the thing we never said. And you were the one who stayed. He looks up then. His eyes are the color of glass bottles left in the sun. I didn't stay because you asked me to. I stayed because he was my son, because showing up is love's first job. He swallows. Maybe it's only one. My mouth opens on a reflexive defense, and then closes. Across the room, Russell hovers, guilty and confused, like a boy who pressed the red button because it was there. He won't meet my gaze. I don't go to him. Not yet. I need to talk to him, Mark says. It takes me a second to know which him he means. Caleb. He's outside, I say. Give him a minute. Mark nods. His hands are steady on the paper plate he doesn't eat from. He always held his breath when he was upset, he says suddenly, a small memory pulled out of a pocket. We used to sit on the floor and count to 10 together. He looks at the door. I don't know if I should count with him now. You should, I say. If he lets you. He nods again, then slips away, moving like a man who has rehearsed sorrow and still finds it new. The night recalibrates itself. The DJ announces a brief intermission, which feels like calling a flood a puddle. Guests drift to the patio and the hall. Someone cuts the cake because ritual is a rope you hold when the shore is far. The photographer deletes something on his screen. The coordinator whispers to her clipboard. Russell finally approaches. He smells like aftershave and shame. Tess, he says, using the nickname he knows I love and that now feels like a hand on a bruise. I messed up. Yes, I say. I'm not ready to help him soften it. I thought... He stops and scrubs a palm over his face. No, I didn't think. I was angry. Seeing him up there, Mark, being called Dad, being... I don't know. I wanted the truth to stop pretending. It wasn't your truth to reveal, I say. My voice is tired now. You picked the loudest way to say a quiet thing. He bows his head. I'm sorry. I believe him. I also know apologies don't rewind film. We'll talk later, I say. Right now I need to be his mother. He nods and retreats, the air still shaped like him after he goes. I find a corner and sit. The chair is one of those white folding ones that always promise splinters. My hands shake. I put them under my legs the way I used to when I was a kid, sitting through sermons that felt too long. I remember the first time I lied to Caleb. He was 3 and asked why his hair was darker than mine. I said, "Because you got all the good chocolate." He giggled, delighted, and I thought, maybe this is what protection looks like, sugar on the hardest things. Then he was 7 and asked about his other family. We were at the museum, standing under a fossil that made everyone whisper. I said, "Our family is right here," and pointed to the skeleton of the thing that used to live. He accepted it because children believe what you say until they don't. At 12, he came home from school with a project, draw your family tree. He put Mark's name where a father's goes and mine where a mother's goes, and the branches spread bright and clean. I watched him shade the leaves while the part of me that knew how trees worked kept quiet. At 17, he asked, "Did you love Dad when you married him?" We were driving through rain, wipers laboring like old men. "Yes," I said. It was true. It was also complicated. Love doesn't always mean the same shape in the same mouth. If I had told him at any of those points, if I had said, "There's another name under the soil," would this night smell different? Would the word father taste less like a courtroom and more like a porch? The door opens and Mark returns, moving quickly. His face is wet. "He's gone," he says. "I mean, not far. He took the path along the harbor." "I'll go," I say. Standing so quickly the chair complains. We find him near a row of moored boats, Madison holding his hand and looking both brave and 19. Mark reaches for him. Caleb lets him. They stand in a rough triangle, the 3 of us a constellation nobody learned in school. "I'm angry," Caleb says finally, voice low. "I'm not sure at who." "You're allowed," Mark says. "I don't know what to do with this," Caleb says, lifting the bracelet like a small, stubborn moon. "You don't have to do anything with it tonight," I say. "It can sit on a shelf and be a symbol later. Tonight it can just be metal." Madison leans closer to him. "You're still you," she says. "You're still the man who cries at dog commercials and eats cereal at midnight and learned the Viennese waltz for me even though you have 2 left sneakers." He huffs a laugh, small and real. "I love you," he tells her. She nods like she already knows. Mark clears his throat. If you don't want me to, he stops. He has never been good at explaining his own right to be here. "You're my dad," Caleb says. Tears slick his voice. That doesn't move because a sentence did. Mark nods once, hard. I bite my lip to keep from sobbing in a way that would make this about me. Back at the boathouse, the coordinator, brave soul, asks if we want to continue. We do. Not because the night deserves it, but because the love does. The first dance is less choreographed than we planned, more like swaying in the kitchen at midnight. When the father-son dance comes, they don't talk. They count together to 10, moving the way they used to breathe. Guests cry softly and pretend they aren't. The rest of the night lasts longer and shorter than it should. We get through the toasts with smaller words. We cut the cake with laughter that isn't sure of its timing, but shows up anyway. People leave. The harbor exhales. In the borrowed quiet after, I sit on the edge of a chair and consider my next sin or my next mercy. The bracelet glints on the table beside me, catching bits of leftover light. Somewhere out there in Denver or a life that resembles it, the name Evan Pike is sleeping or sober or gone. I've hidden him for 24 years. The hiding is heavier than the truth now. I need to find him, I say to the room that isn't listening. The morning after the wedding arrives like a verdict. Boston's sun is honest, too bright through the kitchen's east-facing window. Coffee tastes like penance. Madison and Caleb are at a hotel by the Commons, wrapped in the strange, quiet newlyweds urn, answers temporarily postponed. Russell is at his brother's place by mutual agreement and a thin thread of grace. Mark sent a text at dawn. Love you both. Here when ready. The gentleness of it makes me sit down hard. I pull the tin box from the top of the pantry. It once held butter cookies. Now it holds things you don't serve with tea. I open it and find the letters I wrote to Evan over the years, but never mailed. They're on whatever paper was nearby. Grocery lists, legal pads, the back of a utility bill. The handwriting changes. The truths do not. February 3rd. You would not believe his eyelashes. They make strangers gasp. He watches ceiling fans like they're telling secrets. June 14th. He calls Mark Maha because he can't say the R yet. It's stuck. We all say it now. Is that cruel? Maybe it's love. November 22nd. He asked me today if I ever wanted to live where the ground is big. I think he meant the sky. April 1st. Do you still play? My hands miss the echo of your guitar in them. That sounds like betrayal even to me. Maybe it is. August 30th. He got taller overnight. He's 12 and trying not to be. He asked if I ever lied to him. I said no. I'm going to hell in a sensible skirt suit. Some letters are angrier. Some are almost kind. None of them have stamps. I spread them across the table like tarot, trying to read a fate that doesn't require faith. Under the paper is the velvet pouch, the bracelet absent now, and leaving a dark ghost shape behind, like a missing tooth your tongue can't stop finding. I think about the inscription, if you get lost, listen for the river, and wonder how many times I've ignored the sound of water in my own chest. My phone buzzes. It's a number I don't know. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answer, because the morning is already full of things I didn't want. Is this Teresa Rowan? The voice is female, professional, not unkind. Only Mark called me Tess. Only my mother insisted on Teresa when I was in trouble. At the hospital where I work, they use Ms. Rowan as if titles can hold you together. This is, I say, bracing for someone else's catastrophe. This is Dana from Harkness Recording, she says. We're updating contact info for some older clients. I have an Evan Pike listed with your name as a secondary contact. Long shot, I know, but do you have a current number for him? For a second, the light tilts. I grip the table. I don't, I say. Then, where is he? Last we had Denver, she says. But we've got a note here, last year, says Chicago Run. Sometimes our book is more rumor than gospel. Chicago. My laugh surprises me. Mine too. She apologizes for the bother. I thank her like she offered me a raft. Chicago. I lived there for 3 years after Mark and I dissolved the way good people sometimes do. It's where I met Russell, in line at a pharmacy during a snowstorm, both of us holding cold medicine and hopes that felt manageable. I wonder if Evan and I ever walked the same snowy block and didn't know it. I wonder if he still wears the denim jacket with the rip under the left shoulder. I wonder if I'm romanticizing a man who handed me a bracelet and a story and nothing else he could keep. Caleb calls after noon. His voice is hoarse, like he cried into pillows that fought back. Can we talk? He asks. Always, I say, and the word finally earns itself. He comes over with Madison, both of them soft with the way exhaustion and love braid. We don't do small talk. We sit at the table with the letters between us like a fourth guest nobody invited, and I tell him I want to find Evan. I don't tell him I need to. He can hear it. Do you want me to come? He asks, careful, like we're deciding to handle dynamite. Yes, I say, if you want to. I don't add. I can't do this alone, and I shouldn't ask Mark, and Russell isn't my map for this. Madison looks at us both, then nods. I'll stay here and run interference with the families, she says. I'll tell Aunt Gina the reception hall didn't poison anyone, and I'll tell Uncle Frank to stop writing a Facebook novel about it. Caleb half smiles. You're a saint. I'm hungry, she replies, as if sainthood requires lasagna. I'm going to order enough for the neighborhood. After we eat, we plan. Planning is generous. What we do is draw lines on a page. I call the old Denver number I kept in my phone like a charm against cowardice. It belongs to a car wash now, the kind with rainbows painted on the cinder block walls. I call the bar. It closed during the long year when people sang to their neighbors from balconies because their breath had become weapon and prayer. I call a guy named Jer who used to run sound and now runs marathons for his heart. Evan, he says. He cleaned up. Then he didn't. Then I think he did again. He was always better at being better when he had someone to be better for. He pauses. We've all got a grave we didn't die in. Do you know where he is? I ask. Last I heard, Chicago, he says. Neighborhood with trees that look like they're practicing forgiveness. What's it called? Ravenswood. Or maybe Logan. This was months ago. I thank him. I make a list. Chicago, Ravenswood, Logan. Harkness recording. Old friends. Jer, Maya from the bar, Dell with the dog. I don't know why writing the names makes me feel less like a coward and more like a scientist about to ruin her own experiment. Mark texts, "Need anything?" I stare at the screen. The kindest thing I can do is keep him out of this part. The cruelest thing would be the same. I type, "We're going to look for him. I'll keep you posted. I love you." The last sentence is terrifyingly true, and not the kind I have to cancel on any altar. Russell calls and I don't pick up. Then I do because avoiding him isn't a solution, it's a rehearsal. "I'm driving up," he says. "I should be there. I should apologize. To him, to you, to Mark." "You should," I say, "but not now. Give us a few days." "Tess," he says, voice shredding. "Please." "Later," I repeat, gently, like moving a glass away from the edge of a table. "We'll be back soon." I don't know if soon is a week or a year. I don't know if we'll be back the same shape. I pack a bag, jeans, sweaters, the red scarf that makes me look like I've slept, the folder of letters, the empty velvet pouch. Caleb packs lighter than I would like. He is 24 and believes he can buy what he forgets. I slip the bracelet into my coat pocket. It knocks gently against my thigh like a heartbeat that can't be counted by a machine. At dusk, we drive west. The city unwinds behind us. The sky over the turnpike stains itself orange, then bruised purple, then a black that knows our names. We don't play music. The silence feels like penance and possibility. At a rest stop in Pennsylvania, we walk stiff-limbed to the vending machines. The coffee tastes like melted crayons. Caleb leans against a pillar and watches a toddler race circles around a tired father who looks like he would go to war for bedtime. "He's not the enemy," Caleb says suddenly. "Who?" I ask. "Mark," he says. "Or Russell. Or Evan." He presses his palm to his chest. It's this, the feeling that the ground moved and nobody told me about plate tectonics. He looks at me. "I'm mad at you, and I'm grateful you're here." "I can take both," I say. The words hurt and heal in the same breath. I deserve both. We get back in the car and keep driving. The highway hums. The night does what it always does. It turns on its axis and brings us along even if we're not ready. Ohio is a long, patient sentence. Indiana is a comma that comes too soon. By the time we hit the outskirts of Chicago, the sun is a dull coin and the skyline looks like graph paper someone left in the rain. Caleb drives the last stretch. He's steadier than I am, or he's faking it better. I'm not sure there's a difference. We rent a small room above a bakery in Ravenswood. The stairwell smells like cinnamon and old wood. The woman at the desk gives us keys and a warning about the radiator. "It hisses," she says. "Don't take it personally." We drop our bags and walk to the corner diner where the specials are written in a hand that knows grief and gravy. Caleb orders pancakes the size of license plates. I order eggs because my mother taught me that protein is what you eat when you're about to do something hard. "I keep thinking about that night," he says, pouring syrup that doesn't know when to stop. "How one sentence can make a room into a cliff." "Words are small," I say, "but we build houses out of them." He wipes his mouth and watches the steam rise from his plate. "Do you think he knows about me?" "Evan?" I say. "He knew once." I could say more. I could say, "He held you and cried and promised to be better and then wasn't." He sent postcards with crooked skies. He disappeared in ways that were almost polite. "I don't know if he knows you now." Caleb nods like the truth is a boat he'll ride anyway. We spend the day asking strangers for a man we only half remember. At Harkness Recording, a guy with a hoodie and a kindness problem looks up from a mixing board and says, "Pike." He came by last winter. Clean, sober. Looked like a man who'd learned where his edges were. He checks a screen. No booking since spring, though. At a cafe on Montrose, a barista with a nose ring says, "Evan, the guitar guy?" He plays the open mic at Brannigan's sometimes, Tuesdays. It's Thursday. We find the bar anyway. In the afternoon light, the place looks like a church that doesn't ask questions. Scarred wood, a jukebox with too much Springsteen, a neon sign that hums like a lullaby with a drinking problem. The bartender shakes his head. "Haven't seen him in a month," he says. "But when he's here, he doesn't drink anything stronger than ginger ale. That's worth something." He wipes a glass, because that's what bartenders do when they're out of nouns. Back in the room, the radiator keeps its promise and hisses. I sit on the bed and pull out one letter, then another, as if paper can triangulate a man. Caleb showers and comes out smelling like motel soap, and the boy who used to wrap himself in a towel and ask me to make him a burrito. We are both ridiculous and holy. We are both tired. "Why didn't you and Dad stay together?" he asks, perching on the chair that wobbles on one leg like a flamingo at rest. He means Mark. The word Dad stays his. "We loved each other," I say. "And then we couldn't carry the same weight anymore. He wanted plans. I wanted air. We were both right and both wrong." I lean back against the headboard. "Also, the secret lived in our house like mold you can pretend isn't there until everyone is coughing." He nods. "And Russell?" "He's a good man who made a bad choice," I say. "He holds his hurt like a lantern and doesn't notice when it burns the wallpaper." I smile small. "You would like him better if you'd met him on a Tuesday at the grocery store, arguing with me over which grapes are actually sweet." Caleb looks at the ceiling. The radiator sighs like an old cat. "Do you think I'm going to feel this big forever?" "No," I say, "but you'll remember it. That's different." He crawls onto the bed fully clothed and lies next to me, the way he did when thunderstorms put dents in his courage. We stare at the water stain in the corner that looks like a country we don't have visas for. I think about calling Mark. I think about texting Russell. I do neither. The next morning we start again. We walk through Ravenswood and Logan, and the parts of Lincoln Square that smell like bakeries and children, and old men arguing about baseball. We leave notes at places that might remember him. We learn the kind of patience that doesn't feel like virtue. In the late afternoon, during that hour when everything looks like it's auditioning for nostalgia, my phone buzzes. Unknown number again. I answer without hope. Hope is something I don't trust myself with anymore. "Is this Teresa Rowan?" The voice is male this time, careful, as if he's approaching a skittish animal. "It is," I say, and I stand without meaning to. "This is Evan," he says. "Evan Pike." The radiator stops hissing. The city outside the window leans in. "I heard you were looking," he says. "Jer told me. And Dana at Harkness. You've always been better at finding me than I was at finding myself." He laughs, not proud. "I'm at a shelter on Lawrence, between a bakery and a place that sells tuxedos nobody needs. I'm working the desk. I'm sober today." He swallows, and the phone transmits it. "I've been sober for most of the days lately." "I'm here," I say. "I'm in Chicago, with Caleb." He breathes my son's name like a song he's only heard on the radio. Does he knows, I say, because of a sentence spoken in a room that still smells like roses. "Is he okay?" he asks. "No," I say, "but he's breathing." There's a pause. "That's a lot of the battle," he says. "You always said that." "I always wanted it to be enough," I say. I look at Caleb, who is watching me with eyes that demand I tell the truth now or never again. "We can come now," I say into the phone. "Please," Evan says. "I've been rehearsing this apology for 24 years. The shelter is clean in the way that means someone cares. The chairs don't match, but they're all sturdy. There's a bulletin board by the door listing meetings and free legal help, and a Thanksgiving dinner planned by people who mean it. The desk is an island of order, a pen cup, a binder, a stack of forms with edges aligned tighter than some marriages, He stands when we enter. His hair is threaded with grey. The denim jacket is gone, replaced by a sweater with an elbow patch that someone probably sewed on with the same kind of hope I remember. His eyes are the same. The hands, too. Long fingers, veins like lines on a map. "Hi," he says, and then Tess, as if we are both young enough to deserve our old names. He looks at Caleb and cannot look away. "You're taller than I ever imagined," he says to him. "You have—" He stops. He remembers whose child he is regardless of math. He recalibrates. "You have a presence." Caleb nods, wary, fascinated, polite because his mother taught him to be. "Hi," he says. He doesn't offer a hand yet. He doesn't retreat either. We sit at a table near the coffee urn. The coffee is free and tastes like it understands the concept of mourning as a truce. Evan sets 3 mugs down and then takes his seat as if he doesn't trust chairs not to vanish. He looks at me first because it's easier. "I'm sorry," he says. The words are not theatrical. They arrive like a tool he's learned how to use. "I was a coward. I loved him. I loved you. I loved music. I wasn't good enough to make into a life. I loved what drinking did until it stopped doing that and kept doing the rest. I thought staying away was mercy. It was laziness dressed up in a rented tux." Caleb's mouth tightens. "You knew?" he asks. The muscle in his jaw that looks like mine, the stubborn one, jumps. "I knew," Evan says. "Not at first. Then yes. I lied to myself the way I was taught. Then I tried to be better. Then I failed in public. Then I got good at failing quietly." "How many years sober?" Caleb asks. He doesn't blink. 2 months this time, Evan says. He doesn't flinch from his own math. 3 years before that, then 6 months of pretending. I could give you every number like beads on a sorry rosary. None of them add up to what you deserved. Caleb nods. "Did you ever try to find me?" "I stood outside your school once," Evan says, and the sentence shakes. "I watched you come out with a backpack too big for your back and a band-aid on your knee. I saw a man put his hand on your head and I thought, I don't have the right to touch what I dropped. I wrote letters and didn't send them. I sent postcards and then didn't. I have a box like a grave." He swallows. "Does that give me anything?" "No. It just keeps me honest." We sit with that. A man down the hall laughs at something small and good. A woman asks for a blanket. The radiator here hums too, a city's promise not to let you freeze. Evan looks at me then, the way we used to look at each other before the baby and the choices. His face holds the question he's too late to ask. "Do you still carry me?" I give him the truth he deserves, and I do not owe him. I nod once. It doesn't mean what it used to. It means I am both loyal and healed in different corners. "I brought something," I say, reaching into my coat. I place the brass bracelet on the table between us. It catches the fluorescent light and looks suddenly humble. "I kept it," I say. "All this time." He picks it up like it might cut him. "I was 21 when I bought this," he says, half to the metal, half to the air. "I thought symbolism was the same as a plan." He slides a finger over the inscription and laughs without humor. "If you get lost, listen for the river." I thought that was deep. It was a sentence I could afford. Caleb reaches for it. Evan lets go quickly, as if the right to hold it transferred via blood he didn't spill. Caleb reads the words again and breathes, slow, like maybe somewhere a river is showing him how. "Do you want to walk?" Evan asks. "There's a park nearby. The trees are loud." We walk along Lawrence, past the bakery and the tuxedo shop, then into green that hasn't given up for winter yet. The leaves hiss with gossip and grace. Evan puts his hands in his pockets like he's afraid of what they'll do if he doesn't. "Who taught you to shave?" he asks Caleb. "Mark," Caleb says. He doesn't say dad here in this sentence. He doesn't have to. Evan nods. "Good," he says. "Who taught you to tie a tie?" "Also Mark," Caleb says. "Who taught you to play anything?" Evan asks, risking something. "Mom," Caleb says, glancing at me. "She taught me the first 3 chords on the guitar and said they were enough for 50 songs if I had something honest to say." Evan smiles, and the years fall off his face like lint. She always knew that part. We sit on a bench. For a while, no one speaks. Then Evan says, "Ask me anything and I'll answer. If I lie, you can throw the bracelet into the river and walk away." Caleb considers. "What's your favorite song you ever wrote?" Evan looks startled, then delighted. "There's one about a woman who could fold a map with one hand while holding a baby with the other," he says. "It's not good, but it's true." Caleb nods. "Do you think you would have been a good father?" "No," Evan says, immediate. "Not then. Maybe now. Maybe I've learned how to show up without thinking I'm the main character." He looks at me. "I'm sorry you had to carry both me and everything else." "I chose to carry what I carried," I say. "The regret is not telling him the weight's name." We walk back to the shelter as the sun starts to consider leaving. Evan returns to his desk. He has a shift that goes until midnight and a meeting after. He writes his number on a scrap of paper and hands it to Caleb, not me. "If you want," he says, "or don't. You owe me nothing." Caleb slips the paper into his wallet behind his license like he's learning who he is by layers. "I might call," he says. "I might not. I need room to be confused." "I'm an expert on that," Evan says, and his smile is steady for the first time. We leave. On the sidewalk, Caleb stops. "He has my hands," he says, astonished. "But the way he said favorite song, that was you." "Maybe you're a quilt," I say. "We all are. The trick is learning your own pattern." He nods, and we walk into the evening that smells like bread cooling and traffic trying its best. Back in the room, Caleb lies on the floor with his feet on the chair, a posture he's used since childhood when the world climbs his ribs. I make tea because it's what I can make. My phone blinks with messages that don't know how to be patient. Mark, Russell, my sister, Madison's aunt, a florist who wants to confirm that the peonies survived the night. I call Mark first. He answers on the first ring. "You okay?" he asks, which is how he loves. "We found him," I say. Silence clicks, then breath. "How is he?" "Old," I say, and then revise because accuracy is respect. "Changed. Trying." "And Caleb?" "Listening," I say, which is harder than it sounds. Mark exhales. Tell him I made pancakes this morning because that's what I do when I don't know what to do." "I will," I say. "He'll want a plate when we get back." We sit in that gentle space where people who used to be married learn how to be family without the paperwork. Before we hang up, Mark says, "He's my son." It isn't a defense. It's a liturgy. Then I call Russell. He doesn't answer. He texts instead. "How's he doing?" I type and erase a dozen times before sending. "We found him. He's sober. We're talking." The dots appear and disappear, his thoughts typing and erasing too. "I'm sorry," he sends finally. "I'll say it to him, and to you, and to Mark." Then, "I'm scared I broke something I can't fix." "You did," I type, and then add, "We all did." That's not the end of the sentence. Caleb watches the radiator scold the room. "Do you still love Russell?" he asks, not nosy, just curious about the algebra of hearts. "I do," I say, "but today I don't like him." He nods as if this math matters. We go back to the shelter the next day, and the next. We take walks that are more conversation than miles. We sit in meetings where people tell the truth into plastic chairs. We hear a man say, "I thought drinking was my music until I realized I had a better song." We hear a woman say, "I don't know how to forgive me, so I'm practicing on my sister." We hear every version of the sentence Evan began with, "I'm sorry," and we start to understand it's less a magic spell than a door. On the fourth day, Caleb asks if Evan wants to see his wedding photos. He scrolls on his phone, showing him Madison laughing, me pinning a crooked boutonniere, Mark pretending not to cry, Russell with his hand on my shoulder before it all tipped. "I ruined your night," Evan says softly when a photo of Caleb on the dock appears, the harbor swallowing what it can. "No," Caleb says. "Your absence did. We let silence set the table." He looks at me. "We all did." Evan nods. "I'm here now," he says, and he doesn't make it bigger than that. We go to a guitar store that smells like varnish and youth. Evan picks up a battered Martin and strums C, G, Am, F, my 3 chords and one more. He sings lightly to test the room. If you get lost, listen for the river, and for a second the past and the present hold hands without arguing. Caleb grins despite himself. You have a good voice for someone who thought symbolism was a plan. Evan laughs, the kind that starts in the belly. You inherited your mother's edge, he says. He looks between us. Thank God. That night Madison calls. Her voice brims. How is it? She asks. Is he scary? Is he charming? Is he both? Yes, I say, honest. And he's none of those things when he's tired. I made lasagna for when you get back, she says. A mountain of it. Uncle Frank posted a story online about forgiveness that is actually a review of the DJ's set list. Aunt Gina is selling a Wedding Truthers narrative on Facebook. I blocked her. I miss you. Soon, I say, and the word feels like a bench we can sit on. After I hang up, Caleb says, I want to bring Mark here, not to test anything, not to compare, to prove I can breathe with both of them in the same room. The thought scares me the way crossing a bridge does when you forgot how good the view is. Okay, I say, let me call him. Mark doesn't need convincing. He books a flight so fast I wonder if he had it open already, as if Faith wears frequent flyer miles now. He arrives with a backpack that has snacks and a book about birding, because he believes in having something to do with your eyes when you're listening. We plan nothing. We go to the shelter during Evan's break, and the 3 men who rightfully claim the word father in their own languages stand in a triangle. The geometry of our lives made human. I set a paper cup of coffee in the middle of them as a lukewarm offering and step back. Hi, Mark says. Hi, Evan says. Caleb looks at both of them the way people look at horizons. Okay, he says, I'm going to start. Dad, Mark, you taught me how to patch a tire and keep plants alive. You showed up for every terrible school play and made it sound like Broadway. Evan, you wrote the song that is my blood whether I wanted it or not. You're here now. I don't know what that means yet. But I want you to know I'm trying. They nod, these 2 men who are not mirror images, but share the same shadow now. Mark extends his hand first. Evan takes it like a sacrament. I'm sorry, Evan says softly, for all the years I made you carry what I dropped. I'm angry, Mark replies, equally soft, but I'm more tired than angry. He looks at Caleb. I want him to have a bigger table. Evan's mouth twitches. I'm not good at eating without drinking, he admits, but I'm learning. We stand there while the radiator hums and the city does what cities do, keeps moving, makes room, forgets where the light switch is and finds it again. It is not cinematic. It is better. It is ordinary, and therefore holy. We decide to do what we avoided for years, the test. Not because numbers will tell Caleb who his father is, he already has 2, but because truth deserves paperwork sometimes. The clinic is quiet, soft-voiced nurses and magazines that pretend anyone wants to read about kitchens right now. The waiting room chairs are the same everywhere. Their squeak is a language. Caleb fills out forms. Mark and Evan sit on either side of him, a tableau I might have prayed for if I believed prayer was bargaining and not breathing. Do you want me in there? I ask. Caleb shakes his head. No. Yes. He smiles, nervous. Can you stand outside the door like when I was 5 and afraid of shots? I need to know you're there. I'll be the wall, I say. It's the job I keep applying for and sometimes get. The nurse calls his name. He disappears into a hallway painted the color of toothpaste. Mark follows. Evan pauses, then goes too after the smallest nod from Caleb. I stay, fingers worrying the red scarf in my lap until it looks like a map of a country that only exists if you are the mother of a son in a clinic with 2 men who both deserve to be called father. When they come back, Caleb's cheek has a tiny square of gauze on it, like a flag planted where no battle was fought. Easy, he says. Stupid easy. He sits. I hand him water like he ran a marathon. How long? He asks no one and everyone. A week, the nurse had said. Science moves at a pace kindness cannot rush. We fill the days with walks and meals, and the kind of conversations that sap you and feed you at once. Evan shows us the shelter's pantry and the chart where volunteers sign up to sort donations. Mark offers to build shelves because he can't fix hearts without a hammer. Caleb helps a man fill out a form and learns more about dignity than any lecture could teach him. One night we go to open mic at Brannigan's. The room smells like spilled beer and second chances. Evan tunes a guitar with reverence, then plays a song he claims he wrote yesterday but probably carried for years, a simple melody about rivers and return and the sound of someone learning to be out loud again. His voice cracks on one line and the room leans in, the way people lean toward a baby they want to hold but won't ask to. Caleb claps the way he did when he was little and proud of someone for being brave. Mark wipes his eye like there's dust. I press my palm flat to my chest and think, the river is not a place, it's an action. After outside under the bruised sky, Evan reaches for the bracelet I've been keeping in my pocket, then pulls back. He should have it, he says, nodding toward Caleb. It was always his. He'll take it when he's ready, I say. We don't make the moment into a ceremony. We let it be a waiting. On the 6th day, an email arrives. It sits on my phone like a small bomb. I'm the first to see it. I don't open it. I gather the men I love. The plural of that word still astonishes me. And we sit together on the bed that squeaks when you exhale. Ready? Caleb asks. No one answers because readiness is a myth, but we nod anyway. I open the email. The words are clinical and precise. The numbers are not a surprise to anyone who has ever seen Caleb laugh with his head back or hold a guitar like a third hand. The probability says what our bones already learned. Evan is the biological father. Caleb breathes. In, out. The radiator hisses its amen. Mark nods once as if someone finally labeled a draw. Evan puts his face in his hands and makes the sound men make when they remember the baby they didn't hold enough. Caleb reaches first. He puts his hand on Mark's shoulder, then on Evan's. He doesn't say anything. The gesture is better than speech. My throat does that tight thing and I swallow against it until the wave passes. Later, alone with Mark in the hallway that smells like cinnamon and dust, I say, I'm sorry. It's inadequate and it's all there is. I know, he says. I also know that none of this changes where I'll be on Saturday mornings when he calls because the sink is making a sound like a dying whale. He smiles, small. It only changes the story we tell about why he loves the key of G so much. I put my head on his shoulder for a second. That is a decade long. You are the kindest man I know. I'm also the angriest, he says. They can live in the same house if you clean often. Evan and Caleb go for a walk. I watch them go, their gaits echoing each other like a chorus and a verse. I think of the night on the dock and the sentence that cracked our life in half. I think, maybe it cracked it open instead. Russell flies in like a man who doesn't know how to land. He texts from the airport, then from the sidewalk, then from the lobby. When he appears in the doorway of our small room, he is wearing the jacket he saves for funerals and talks with his hands because he cannot figure out what to do with them otherwise. Tess, he says. Caleb. He nods to Mark, who is quietly reading bird facts in the corner, and then to Evan, who stands by the window like a man in a painting about weather. I shouldn't be here, Russell says. I should have been here a long time ago in a different way. Today I'm here to say something I should have said the minute I heard my own voice coming out of speakers. Caleb sits on the edge of the bed. He looks like a judge who hates the job. Okay, he says. I'm sorry, Russell says. I thought truth was a weapon, and if I used it, I would win. I forgot that we're on the same team. I hurt you, I hurt your mother, I humiliated Mark. I turned your night into a lesson nobody asked for. He swallows. I don't have a defense. I have reasons and none of them are good enough to save me. The room listens, it doesn't forgive, it hears. Evan's hand is on the window frame, a vein standing in sharp relief. Mark closes his book without marking the page. Caleb nods, slow. Thank you, Caleb says, for saying it like that. He's quiet a moment. You don't get to tell our story. You do get to be in it if you can be gentle. Russell's eyes fill. I can learn gentle, he says. I thought I knew it. I didn't. He turns to Mark. I am so... Mark lifts a palm. You don't have to tell me the shape of my hurt, he says kindly. I know it. What I need is for you to respect the work it took to keep a boy upright. I do, Russell says. I didn't that night. I do now. He turns to Evan. I don't know you, he says. But I held your absence against everyone. That wasn't fair. Maybe it was easy. It was not fair. Evan nods. I forgive you, he says, surprising us all. Maybe because it costs me nothing to give you what I'm every day begging for. His mouth tilts. Maybe because the worst thing any of us did was believe we were the center of the room. Russell laughs, one sharp exhale. I'm good at that. We all are, Evan says. We're men. They actually smile at each other, two strangers sharing a mirror. Russell turns back to me. I don't know if we're okay, he says. I know I want us to be. I will go to counseling. I will listen. I will read the books you hand me instead of putting them on the nightstand like trophies. I will... He stops. I will stop making pain a performance. I believe you want that, I say. I need time to believe you can do it. I can hold time, he says, and I see the kid in him who used to show up late to class and then earn the teacher back by picking up chairs. We make space on the tiny couch and sit in a crooked row. The radiator hisses its familiar commentary. Outside, a bus sighs at the stop. The city drags night over its shoulders. Can we try dinner? Caleb asks, tentative. All of us. Not to fix it, to prove we can exist in the same booth without burning it down. We go to a place that serves burgers and salads and forgiveness in plastic baskets. We order too much. Russell tells a story about the time he and I tried to assemble a bookshelf and ended up with a modern art installation. Mark counters with the story of the science fair volcano that erupted on the principal's shoes. Evan says, I once played a show in a laundromat, and we all look at him like that's the best idea we've ever heard. Nobody mentions the test. Nobody says the word real unless it's about butter. When the check comes, all three men reach for it. The waitress laughs and says, you can split it 3 ways, and none of them argue. After, in the cool air, Caleb walks between Mark and Evan, one hand on each of their arms as if they are the banister he needs on both sides of the stairs. Russell and I walk behind, our steps out of sync and slowly learning each other again. You should keep the bracelet, I tell Caleb, or throw it in the river, or put it in a drawer next to your toothbrush. Make it ordinary, or sacred. I won't tell you which. He pulls it from his pocket. The brass has warmed to his skin. He turns it once, twice, then slides it onto his wrist. It doesn't fit perfectly, he doesn't force it. He wears it like a question he's willing to live with. Back at the room, while the men fall into the kind of exhausted talk that turns into sleep, I sit at the small desk and write a letter. Not to Evan, not to Mark, not to Russell, to Caleb. Son, I write, you were born on a Tuesday. The nurse had freckles and the clock was wrong. I thought I would break and then I didn't. I thought I'd know how to tell you everything and then I didn't. I have kept secrets, they kept me. I am learning to tell the truth without making it heavy for you to carry. There are 3 men who call you theirs, and none of them are wrong. One taught you to show up. One taught you to hear your own noise. One taught you that a bad choice can still make a good apology. You taught yourself how to be kind in the middle of chaos. You taught me the shape of patience. If you get lost, listen for the river, yes, but also listen for the hum of a radiator, the clatter of a spoon in a glass, the sound your mother makes when she laughs at something that hurts a little. Those are rivers too. I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I am sorry I told myself the timing had to be perfect, to be honest. I am not sorry for you. You are not a result. You are the origin. Love, Mom. I fold the paper and slip it under his door like we are roommates, and I am slightly drunk on courage. I lay down next to Russell on the squeaking bed. He turns toward me, careful, like I might spook. Thank you for letting me come, he whispers. Thank you for saying sorry, I whisper back. We sleep. In the early hours, sirens sing the city's lullaby. I dream of rivers that run through rooms with carpet and baseboards. I dream of boats inside houses. I dream of bridges made of spoons. In the morning, Caleb emerges with the bracelet on his wrist and the letter folded into squares in his pocket. He kisses the top of my head on his way to the coffee. He says nothing and everything. We decide to go home. Not because everything is fixed, but because this part is done. Evan walks us to the train. He stands on the platform with his hands in his pockets and says, I'll be where you can find me. He looks at Mark. Thank you for the way he laughs. Mark nods. Thank you for his hands. They shake again. It's not a ceremony, it's a habit beginning. Russell hugs Evan like men do when they don't know what else to do. Evan stiffens, then relaxes. Progress is noisy in the body. On the train, the city slides by like a flipbook. Caleb watches a boy press his forehead to the glass and make it fog, drawing a heart that looks like a potato. I did that, he says, nostalgia warm in his voice. But you did everything, I say with just enough exaggeration to make him roll his eyes. When we land in Boston, the air tastes like salt and home. Madison waits at baggage claim with a sign that says, "My husband," and a drawing of a pizza. She cries when she sees us, then laughs at herself, then cries again. She kisses Caleb until a toddler points and says, "Gross," and his mother pretends not to smile. At home, there's lasagna and more calls, and a quiet that isn't heavy anymore. The next days are a collage of ordinary acts. Work emails, laundry, the absurd insistence of bills. It is a relief. It's also the arena where forgiveness actually lives. A week later, on a Sunday that keeps starting and stopping rain like it can't make up its mind, we gather on my porch. The porch swing complains with each breath, but it holds. Mark brings pancakes because he decided that's his role in all climates. Russell brings flowers and apology in Tupperware. Caleb brings Madison and a toolbox because the cabinet under my sink squeaks a protest I've been ignoring. Evan sends a text, "Meeting," then a shift, then I'll call at 8. Don't worry if I don't. We don't wait for 8. We live a day. Russell and Mark end up side by side on the steps, watching the rain sheet off the maple leaves. They talk about nothing, sports, a neighbor's dog, the way the city is both kind and not. The silence between them has changed. It used to be a weapon. Today it's a bench. Caleb fixes the cabinet, half for the satisfaction, half because doing a small thing with your hands is a way of praying when the nouns failed you. He looks up at me at one point and says, "You know, I'm okay," and the simplicity of it makes me tear up in a way that embarrasses us both. Madison sets the table, aligning forks like soldiers, and then intentionally messing them up, because perfection makes her itchy. She hums a song I don't know but have decided to like because she does. After lunch, the rain comes hard. We move closer under the awning, shoulders touching, because space is a luxury weather doesn't always allow. The conversation turns quiet, then honest, then quiet again. "I didn't realize," Russell says to Mark without drama, "that when I said the sentence at the wedding, I was saying it to myself too. You're not the real father. That fear is the one I aimed at you." Mark turns the idea over like a coin. Being real, he says, is just showing up when it's raining. They both look up as thunder rolls over the house like furniture being moved in a heaven I don't particularly subscribe to. We laugh because sometimes the weather gets your metaphors for you. At 8, my phone vibrates. Evan. I put it on speaker and set it in the middle of the table. The porch becomes a small stage where no one has to perform. "How's the river?" Evan asks, a smile tucked in the words. "Flooding the gutters," Caleb says. "We're on the porch with pancakes gone cold." "I wish I were there," Evan says, honest enough to hurt and not make a mess. "You are," Caleb says, and I see Russell and Mark both straighten almost imperceptibly at the generosity of that sentence. We talk about nothing that's actually everything. The way the maple dumps water like a dog after a bath, the fact that Madison found a thrift store lamp that looks like it belongs in a French movie, the patient way Mark explains how to silence a squeaky hinge, the joke Russell tells that isn't funny but is familiar. Evan laughs. It's a good sound. When we hang up, the rain slows to a whisper. The porch smells like wood and new chances. I feel my shoulders drop from their high station near my ears. I let my hand rest on the table, and I don't flinch when Russell's finds it. Not forgiveness, not yet, but proximity. That's a verb, too. Not all steps are forward. The next week, Evan calls after a meeting and he is not sober. I hear it in the way the syllables try to row a straight line and keep turning in circles. "I'm sorry," he says over and over until the words lose their letters. "Where are you?" I ask, already on my feet. "In the place," he says, "the one with the jukebox. I wanted to hear the song about the laundromat." "We're coming," I say. I don't consult anyone. I don't weigh propriety. I grab my keys and yell for Caleb, who appears with his shoes in his hand and his eyes wide and hurt. "Mom," he says. He isn't a child anymore. He is anyway. We fly to the bar because that's what it feels like, the car a bad bird. Russell texts, "Be careful." Mark texts, "Do you want me there?" I type, "Yes," and then, "No," and then, "Later." I hate myself for all three. When we arrive, the room is loud with nostalgia and bad decisions. Evan sits at the end of the bar, fingers wrapped around a glass of ginger ale like he's trying to pretend it isn't next to what it is next to. He sees us and winces the way a man does who knows he's been caught by the exact right people. "I messed up," he says, and it's the truest thing in the room. Caleb stands in front of him, tall and steady. "You called," he says. "That's not nothing." Evan nods, eyes wet, world tilted. "I wanted to be better in front of you," he says. "Instead, I'm just true." "Truth isn't insult," I say. "It's a tool." I motion to the bartender. "Water," and the check. "And thank you." Outside, the night is one of those that makes you believe summer might come back just to apologize. We sit on a curb like teenagers after a football game. No one says the word disappointed. It's implied and therefore heavier. "I'm going to the meeting down the block," Evan says. "Will you walk me to the door and not in?" "Yes," Caleb says, "and I'll wait here until you come out." Evan nods like someone has handed him a rope tied to a boat he wants to keep. He stands, wobbles, rights himself. At the door, he turns back. "I'm sorry," he says again, but this time he adds, "and I'm going to do the next right thing." He disappears. We sit on the curb, our breaths drawing the same shape in the air. After 20 minutes, the door opens. He comes out, eyes clearer, posture realigned by humility. He looks at us like we might be a miracle and a chore. "Thank you," he says. Caleb taps his wrist where the bracelet sits. "Rivers flood," he says. "They also recede." We take him to the shelter. We make sure someone who loves him in a way that is not mascara and grocery lists is on duty. We go home. We don't speak on the drive. We don't have to. The car is full of our best and worst selves, and the kind of silence that is an agreement, not a wound. Weeks turn into a rhythm that feels like a life. Caleb and Madison host dinners where everyone brings a story instead of a dish. Mark teaches Evan how to fix a leaky faucet because dignity should come with a wrench. Russell and I go to counseling where we learn that apologies don't retire. They show up for shifts like nurses and cashiers. The sentence that broke the wedding has been sanded down by repetition in our mouths. Sometimes Russell says it to himself in the mirror, not as penance, but as a reminder of what he doesn't want to be. Sometimes Mark says it into the sink with the water running just to hear how empty it sounds. Sometimes Evan says it, and then follows it with, "And real means, I'm here today." One afternoon, Caleb asks me to go with him to the river, the real one, the Charles, that patient vein through the city. We sit on a bench and watch rowers move like a multi-limbed animal. The bracelet is dull with use now. The inscription is still there. "What does real father mean?" he asks. We both stare at the water as if it will write the answer in ripples. "It means a job description," I say. "It means a story," I think. "It means a person who shows up to the version of you that's alive that day." "Can a person who failed still be real?" he asks. "Yes," I say, "if he's failing forward." He nods. "Can a person who didn't make me still be real?" "Yes," I say, softer. "He already is." He leans back, arms stretched along the bench. He closes his eyes like a kid in the sun. "I'm not a math problem," he says. "No," I say, and I have never meant anything more. "Your music." He laughs the laugh that is his own, not borrowed from any man. We walk home along the river. The light does what it always does around me when I'm paying attention. It shows off and then goes to bed. Months later, we host a second reception, not to redo, to bless. Madison finds a hall that used to be a post office and now holds the kind of parties where people cry without the mic catching them. We string lights again because humans are predictable and need to tell the night where to look. The cake is smaller. The guest list is too. The music is a playlist Evan and Mark made together with Caleb's edits and Russell's vetoes when something made him wince. Before the first dance, Madison taps her glass with a fork and the room quiets. "We're here to dance with what is true," she says. "Not because the first party failed, because the first party told the truth before we were ready to hear it." She lifts her glass. "To the fathers in all their plural." People cheer, not raucous but house loud, which is the better kind. Caleb dances with me to a Joni Mitchell song, and we both try not to cry and fail with dignity. He says into my hair, "I'm glad you were brave enough to be a coward and then brave." I say into his collar, "I'm glad you keep teaching me how to be your mum." Mark and Evan stand near each other like men at a bus stop who know the route now. Russell hovers and then doesn't, learning how to be part of a room without trying to narrate it. At one point, Mark says something and Evan laughs and they both look surprised and pleased. Like the first time you realize the neighbor you resented grows tomatoes better than anyone. During a quiet song, Caleb lifts the mic. The room's breath holds because we remember what mics can do. "I have 3 fathers," he says. "One by love, one by blood, one by choice. They are not interchangeable. They are not in competition. They are the constellation I navigate by. If you are in this room, you helped me learn the sky." His voice wobbles and then finds itself. "I forgive the spaces in the story. I forgive the sentence that found me. I forgive the silence that grew teeth." He looks at me. "I forgive us." We don't cheer. We do something better. We stand with him in the quiet. Then the music starts again, and bodies remember the syntax of joy. Evan plays one song. It's not about rivers. It's about a porch in the rain and a boy with 2 hands and 3 men offering him anchors. The baritone is steady. Mark nods along, offbeat and happy as always. Russell doesn't cry until the bridge, and then he does, and then he laughs at himself. And I love him again in a new tense. On a Tuesday, a year after the wedding no one will ever forget, and the reception we will remember for different reasons, I walk to the harbour alone. The air tastes like pennies and salt. The boats move like they're practicing forgiveness. I sit on the same dock, where Caleb held the bracelet like a verdict, and look into the water that swallowed our reflections and gave them back rearranged. I close my eyes and hear, not words but sounds that have become liturgy. A radiator's hiss, a guitar's honest crack, the soft slap of pancakes on a plate, rain on an awning, my son counting to 10 with the man who raised him, the click of a phone when someone calls for help instead of hiding. I think about the sentence Russell said, how it burned a shape into our lives. I do not bless it. I do not curse it. I name it and set it down. Real is what shows up. Real is what apologizes without a parade. Real is what keeps making coffee and space. My phone buzzes. A group thread. Mark. Picture of a bird on a fence with the caption, "Eastern Bluebird." Evan. Yes, and that fence needs paint. Bring a brush. Russell. I can do paint. I can bring sandwiches. I can shut up and listen. Caleb. A photo of the bracelet on his wrist, scratched now, beloved now, with the caption, "Listening for the river anyway." I type, "Listening with you." I put the phone away and watch the harbour darken, and then light again. The kind of magic that requires nothing from me but witness. When I get home, there's a box on the porch. Inside is a framed picture from the second reception. Caleb between Mark and Evan, Russell and me behind them, Madison in front, everyone mid-laugh, no one pretending they weren't once broken. Tucked in the corner is a note in Evan's hand. "If you get lost, ask for directions. We're here." I hang the picture in the hallway where the light is forgiving. I stand there longer than makes sense. I breathe. I tell the air, "I forgive you," meaning the past, the sentence myself. I don't say it loudly. Loudness has done enough. That night we gather on the porch again, the swing complaining a little less because I tightened the bolts. The maple holds the last light like a secret it's willing to share. We don't make speeches. We don't need the microphone. We have this. Chairs that hold, coffee that cools, laughter that trusts itself, and the complicated quiet of a family that decided to be one.